Yo, what's good, guys? It is your host, Shisui. I'm right here, and welcome to the channel. Today I'm here to bring you guys another part 2, What If Deku was Shisui's Reincarnation, part 7. Hopefully you guys do enjoy this part. A lot of wacky stuff is going to be happening in this one, but it's going to be enjoyable, or at least that's what I think. Hopefully you guys do enjoy, so better get yourself ready, get yourself a blanket, get some snacks, make yourself comfortable. And also a little bit of a disclaimer, if you guys could, please ignore any background noises, or if you guys hear my stuttering, please ignore it too. Trust me, that would make the what if multiple times better. I'll be trying to edit out as much as I can, but if I'm unable to and you hear it, just ignore it. Trust me, like I said, it makes the what if better. But if you guys understand all that, again, I appreciate your support, and either way, why don't we get started? So with that being said, let's begin.
You're never gonna make it, you're not good enough. There's a million other people with the same stuff. You really think you're different? Man, you must be kidding. Think you're gonna hit it, but you just don't get it. It's impossible, it's not probable, you're irresponsible. Too many obstacles, you gotta stop it, yo. You gotta take it slow, you can't be a pro. Don't waste your time no more. Who the fuck are you to tell me what to do?
Alright guys, let's begin this what if. Hopefully you guys do enjoy, and either way, let's begin. So we now kick off this what if with the forest training camp, where we last left off. Shigaraki had just made his arrival, and he currently right now is about to fight off against Deku. And as for Deku himself, the man was tired. He had to help out his entire class, plus the teachers throughout this entire event. He had to fight Muscular, he had to protect Koda, and now he had to fight off against Shigaraki. He was exhausted. Not only that, but there was a stinging pain in his eyes that wasn't going away, which was taking up even more stamina, and now Shigaraki had arrived. But something was different about him. Deku didn't exactly know what it was, but he could tell that the man was definitely different from what he was before. Something changed in you, Deku would say as he ends up looking at Shigaraki, trying to fight through the pain. At this, Shigaraki says nothing as he begins to scratch all around maniacally, laughing as he tells Deku that he's actually been waiting for this moment. The moment where he finally gets a chance to end him. As both of them would stare at each other in silence, this is when Deku would then rush towards him, and before Shigaraki could do anything, fire arrows would then envelop him as he would be stabbed through the leg and through the stomach in an instant. I apologize, but I have no time for this. I'm exhausted, I'm tired, and I really don't want to deal with you right now. As Deku would think that Shigaraki would now be done, but this is when suddenly he would then feel his senses flare up as he had to dodge out of the way, as Shigaraki would then jump towards Deku and try hitting him with his hand, trying to erase him completely. What? Deku would say as he ends up flipping over and was able to get back his balance as he ends up making a flaming katana and prepares to battle against Shigaraki. Oh, what's wrong? Something shocking happening? Shigaraki would say as he would then begin to pull out the flaming arrows. Even though they burned, he was able to endure it as his wounds would heal. Now this would just shock Deku as Shigaraki would laugh as he then puts both hands on the ground, and as he does, more of the ground, or more of the land at least, begins to decay as he destroys it all, while Deku himself has no choice but to use the body flicker to get away. Now, while doing so, at this point, Shigaraki had pretty much made an entire arena for the both of them, as he now made this ginormous crater where only he was standing in it. Currently right now, Deku was currently on one of the dead trees, as he was trying his hardest to catch his breath while his eyes were burning. Come on, just a little bit more, just a little bit more. I got no time for this. As Deku would then once again use the flaming katanas, he would then use the Uchiha, Halo dance as he begins to shoot out multiple flames directly at Shigaraki. These flaming waves will be sent at him and he'll be hit by each one, but he'll recover in an instant. And at that same time, Shigaraki would rush at Deku as he would try to hit him, but Deku would easily be able to dodge out of the way, or at least he was. As after a while of doing this over and over again with Deku's hits not having any effect on Shigaraki, and Shigaraki just attacking Deku wildly, Deku would eventually begin to see that he was running out of stamina and quickly. And although he was able to outrun Shigaraki, the problem was that how much longer can he keep doing this for? How much longer can he endure the pain? As Deku was trying to think of something, Shigaraki once again tried to attack him, and this time Deku was actually caught off guard, so he had no choice but to flip. But as he does, the jacket that he was wearing for this event had actually got, disintegrated thanks to Shigaraki's quirk, as nothing was left of it, not even the thread. As Shigaraki would laugh, even though he hadn't hurt Deku, at least he was able to do something to him. While Deku himself was getting tired as he pulls out the flaming katana, and this time he aims for Shigaraki's neck, ready to cut off his whole head. However, before he does, Shigaraki is able to evade out of the way as he tries to aim for Deku's stomach this time. However, luckily this time Deku is able to react. Now at this point, Deku had finally reached his limit. The pain had become intolerable. He was now on the ground, as after that last body flicker, he can no longer move. And just as he does, Shigaraki is now making his way towards him at rapid speeds, as now he was finally nearing Deku. He could finally end him. With his hands fully out, he prepares to counter Deku and finish him off. Deku finally had enough of it. His eyes were burning. He couldn't move. He was exhausted. He was full on done with this crap. And just as Deku would think this is when suddenly, as Shigaraki's hand was about to touch him and actually end him, he'll be stopped by a green aura plate. He'll be surprised as he wasn't able to destroy it just upon contact, but he'll be even more surprised as he'll be blown back. He would be pushed away by this invisible force. And as he does, Deku would finally have the opportunity. His eyes were burning as he would then get up. Finally, the pain was beginning to lessen. However, the pain did not leave his eyes completely. As Deku would get up and begin to concentrate on his breathing, as he had learned a lot of techniques from the Anbu, especially conserving his energy, he would then open his eyes. And as he does, Shigaraki, who ended up looking at Deku, will be surprised. Just what the heck are you? And what is wrong with your eyes? Currently right now, as Deku will be staring at Shigaraki, he would have unlocked the Eternal Mangekyo. But that was supposed to be impossible. There was no way for him to actually even be able to get it. There was only one way to get the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and Deku didn't even get it in his past life. So it wasn't possible. This should be impossible. How did he get the Sharingan? Or better yet, the Eternal Sharingan? It didn't make sense to him as he wondered exactly what was going on here or what was at work. But right now was not the time. As now that he had this power, and now that he felt this boost, he could finally take care of the situation, which needed to be taken care of right now. So, with his newly added Eternal Sharingan, Deku would actually create his torso of his Susanoo, the greenish one. And as he does, he also ends up forming its weapon, the drill. Now Shigaraki will be in shock at all of this, as he couldn't believe it. What type of bullcrap was this? This wasn't a quirk. This was just otherworldly. It was unfair. As he screams at Deku for making this, not fun anymore, he touches the ground as he tries to destroy as much as possible, trying to throw Deku off his game, or at least destroy that construct. But nothing happened. The Susanoo was impenetrable as it stayed there, completely taking all the rocks that were thrown at it, and pretty much taking any of the attacks that Shigaraki threw at it. It was pointless. Shigaraki had already lost. So now, using the weapon of the Susanoo, Deku ends up pointing the drill directly at Shigaraki, and as he does, the drill begins to spin, and when it does, it shoots out multiple needles towards Shigaraki. And the man is unable to do anything as Shigaraki tries to block the attacks, but it was pointless. He gets hit over and over again by each and every single one of them. And the thing was, although he had a generous pain tolerance thanks to his, new regeneration, and although he's able to regenerate from most of it, that didn't mean that at the end of the day he was invincible. No, he was far from it. He could still get knocked out and potentially killed. It's just you're going to have to find some other clever tactic to do so. So as Shigaraki will be hit and swarmed by these needles, by the end of the attack, as Deku was finally exhausted from everything he'd thrown at this man, Shigaraki was knocked out. The pain was too intense for him. He couldn't hang on anymore. So with that, he collapsed down into the ground. He regenerated, of course, but still, he was down for the count. It was finally over. Deku would collapse on the ground as well as the Susanoo gets, he just disables it. As finally right now, he could finally rest. The battle was over. So as Deku ends up getting up one last time and walks over to Shigaraki, as well as the rest of the villains, he prepares to make sure that they are, captured. However, right before he does, this is when suddenly he would then be blown back as a portal would then open up behind him. Of course, thanks to Deku being too weak and too tired, he didn't react to it, so he'll be hit by this ginormous blast of wind, and he was unable to do anything about it, so he'll be sent flying. And as he's sent flying, Deku would open his eyes slightly, and as he does, he sees Shigaraki as well as the rest of the villains begin to fall into this portal. Now, this will all be done by Kodagiri, as he had came here to save Shigaraki as well as the rest of the villains that were currently still alive. And while Deku, who tried to stop them, would then suddenly feel all the strength in his body leave him as he blacks out and falls unconscious. He was too exhausted, and with the pain of awakening the Eternal Mangekyo, he couldn't do anything. As with this will put the end for the forest training camp. Sooner or later after these events would transpire, the police would arrive, and luckily there was reported that, 0 deaths had occurred in this one. No one was captured in this one. And luckily for them, none of the students were that badly injured. And as for the villains, they even captured a few of them. For example, Muscular, and for example, the Ninja Turtle. Which I don't know that guy's name, the guy who looks like a Ninja Turtle, but let's just be honest, he is a Ninja Turtle, okay? But moving on. And after that, after following these events, we can now turn to when the teachers end up being informed about this. As we now move towards that. Currently right now in their meeting room, Nezu will be there as he's currently sipping on some tea, and he had a thoughtful expression. Currently right now, he was reflecting on the events that had recently transpired. They were very lucky to have saved the students when they did, or at least they were very lucky enough to have arrived. And they were even more lucky that no deaths had occurred. While sure the students had been injured, luckily none of them had passed away, so that was very, 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 very lucky of them. However, at the same time, it really showed just how faulty their security were. I mean, seriously, if more villains had appeared at the scene, things could have gone completely different. And this caused Nezu to have an expression wondering what he should do next. And as for the rest of the heroes there, things were not looking good for them, as they felt deeply ashamed that they weren't there to save their student, especially All Might, as he had been currently, as he literally says in the manga, he was currently soaking in the tub. So of course he wasn't there to save them. But after all this, the heroes then realized that now villains are now becoming more active, and this caused them to be more on guard. So with this, the heroes have no choice but to plan out the next move, as now this was enough. This had just pushed them over the edge. So now it's finally time for them to take action against the villains. So we can now move towards the next arc, the Hideout Raid arc. A month has passed since the event of the forest training camp. Now, the students have recovered and are currently right now returning back to their school schedule, Deku being one of them. Deku himself had actually now had the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, surprisingly. Now, he doesn't exactly know all the effects or the boost that he got from it, all the fact that now he can just bring out the susanoo much easier than he ever could with the Mangekyo. So of course he was actually excited about this and really wanted to test it out, but not here as it would draw too much attention. Another thing was that during this time, as the month period had passed, the heroes had been eagerly going through investigations to find the villain's hideout, and luckily were able to find it thanks to the investigations of Edshot, who located it. After all, when Edshot found out that technically I guess you can say Deku is his pupil, except not really, but move on. So either way, when Edshot found out that Deku and his class was under attack, he instantly went through investigations, pulling out as much information as he could for the heroes to find the villains. And luckily, he's able to find something. He had found multiple bases, and during the month, they had actually been able to take them down. But right now, he was investigating the more precise locations, the ones that are really like the bigger strongholds. And once again, he was able to find them. This time, he was able to find two of them. One of them being a base where they were hiding full of Nomus, and the other one being a base where, well, let's just say Shigaraki and the rest of the villains hang out at. The little clubhouse, pretty much. He didn't find any of the big ones, like for example where All For One is, but he was able to find them at least. So of course, after getting this information, the heroes were eagerly ready to charge in, but they decided to give it a couple of days, as they needed a few more time to prepare for the moment. Aizawa was also including in this one, as he himself was not going to sit idly by, while his students could potentially end up getting injured. Plus, there's also a big chance he might be able to save Kotogiria in this attempt. So he was going along with President Mike. So as we now move to the past following days, it was finally time for the event. As All Might and the rest of the heroes prepare, this is when they'll finally begin the charge to the villain's base. It was nighttime. As of course Shigaraki and the rest of the villains were currently right now trying to patch up their wounds, as it did take a few days for them to recover. And by a few days, I mean most of the month. And I don't mean by the physical injuries, I mean the mental injuries as well. I mean Shigaraki, just from the pain that he suffered from Deku, was so unimaginable to the point where he himself needed to have a psychological check. Luckily now he's at least stable and is at least able to talk to people. However, if you bring up Deku's name, it kind of triggers something within him, either making him laugh hysterically or making him panic or like scream out and act violently. So yes, like the villains are, I guess you can say, stable at least. However, in this certain night, things turn or take a different turn for them, as it all starts with a simple knock at the door. Anyone order a pizza? That person at the other side of the door would say, which caused the villains currently in the room to look at each other with a weird look. And so suddenly the door will be busted open by All Might, who then ends up knocking out all the villains. This is when sorry, I always mess up their names. Kamari, I don't know if I pronounced his name right, but Kamari Woods would then enter into the room as he ends up actually trapping the villains, using his wood to hold them down and preventing them from moving. As this is when Edshot would also arrive at the location as well, as he ends up knocking out the villains, as this one in a different location, Mount Lady and Best Genius were also there, as they ended up destroying the Nomu factory, pretty much where they were producing Nomus. Now, of course, All Might would explain all this to Shigaraki, who couldn't believe it. Finally, after he just escaped Deku, and after the beating that he just suffered, now here it was. It's almost as if the entire world was against him, as he curses out at Hero for just being who they are and curses them for even existing. This is when a black sludge would then activate, as the villains will actually be teleported away. Now this would cause All Might to be in shock as he rushes towards Shigaraki trying to capture him, but unfortunately he was too late. And with a scream of frustration and anger, All Might then rushes out of the building as he leaps up into the air trying to see if he was able to find them. However, right before he can do anything, an explosion would then go off a few blocks away from them. As currently right now, Mount Lady, as well as the rest of the other heroes that were currently there, were currently actually thrown away to safety, as the one who was only injured in this situation was Best Genius. But he himself was not really looking too good. In fact, he looked like he was nearing death, as he stared up at the man currently known as All For One. He had just arrived at the scene after he heard that, after he pretty much sensed Shigaraki being captured. Oh, sorry, my mouth's not working today. So of course he had arrived at the scene trying to stop it. And as he does, he decided to make his entrance known, as this will be a good time to now draw the attention away from Shigaraki. After all, he had different plans for the boy. So as he makes his presence known, Best Genius would try, using everything in his power to stop him, but unfortunately it was too late, as with a simple wind cannon from his arm, Best Genius will be knocked unconscious. Not dead, but he will be knocked unconscious. So after All For One ends up making his debut, this is when All Might would then suddenly rush from above as he tries to attack All For One, with All For One simply blowing him away with his arm cannon. And as he does, the arm cannon actually makes it to where the surrounding area would also end up being destroyed, as the rest of the heroes were pushed back, as well as any of the nearby buildings. This now turned this entire area into a battle zone, as All Might ends up getting up from the blast as he ends up rushing towards All For One as they begin their epic clash. The battle goes pretty simple. All Might is able to keep up with him for the most part in the very beginning, but he will be flung around in different locations. All the while Shigaraki and as well as Kodagiri and pretty much the rest of them are all sent into a different location as well, as right now, like I said, All For One has different plans for Shigaraki. And speaking of Shigaraki, as All Might eventually is able to land a powerful blow into All For One's face, this is when All For One actually revealed to All Might about who Shigaraki was, his origin. And hearing that, Shigaraki was actually the grandson of his mentor, this actually broke All Might, as he couldn't believe he could have been there for him. However, just before he can despair any further, this is when, of course, All For One would then play even more dirty as he tries to attack All Might. And as All Might was actually in the midst of actually thinking about giving up, this is when he would then hear it. People cheering his name, as all around the world, people were watching this, as above a helicopter was recording everything, crying and telling them everything about the events that were transpiring. And of course, the public seeing this would instantly begin to cheer for All Might, wanting for their number one hero to win. And of course, in typical comic book, anime, shonen, plot armor fashion, All Might is able to gain the strength that he needs as he ends up landing one almighty punch into All For One's face, finishing him off. And after that, All For One himself would have been defeated, as this is when All Might would then pump his fist up into the air, declaring himself the victor. As everyone would be cheering for the number one hero, All For One was actually laughing maniacally. Well, internally at least. And the reason for this one was pretty simple. This was the beginning of the downfall for heroes. As little did the civilians know that they had officially lost their number one hero as of today. As All For One laughs, he then decides it was time for his phase 2 of the plan. And luckily, all the pieces that were needed for it were already in place. So moving on after this, All Might would then suddenly end up pointing to the screen as he ends up exiting out of his bulky form. And as he does, he ends up pointing to the screen one last time, telling it that you're next. Now this will cause a lot of people, the civilians more precisely, to be excited as they think that that's All Might, giving a warning to the villains, telling them that they're next, but no, that's not what it meant. Deku, who was watching all this as he himself was actually at his apartment, or better yet at his home with his mother, who currently right now was watching all this with a tearful expression, while Deku was watching it with a serious look. Deku already understood the meaning behind what he said. That means that this was the end for All Might. This was the end of the number one hero, as this was now the end of All Might's entire era. And now with this, Deku now wonders exactly what's going to happen after this very moment. As Deku would try to think of it, this is when his mother would then ask him if he was okay, and ask him if he wants anything to eat, as after this amazing battle and after everything that was happening, they really need to find something so they can relax themselves. Now Deku would of course agree to this as he ends up, smiling at his mother, to which she would go off to start cooking, But Deku right now was trying to wonder exactly who was the next in line for All Might. Who was going to be next in line to surpass the #1 hero and take up the mantle. As this is where we now turn to a different location. Currently right now, watching what happened, you will see a boy with blonde hair and blue eyes currently crying at the events that had transpired. As he will be end up crying, this is when also right beside him would be another man, this being Night Eye, as he himself was looking at this with a pissed off expression. Great, pushing all that responsibility on a kid. What is that man thinking, he would say. As he shakes his head, however, he deep down was actually very sad that All Might was retiring. However, this is when he then looks at his pupil or disciple, whatever you want to call it, as right now standing there crying would be none other than Mirio Toga, as he would himself will be there crying at what he's seen and what he heard, before finally he ends up wiping them tears away. As suddenly a golden spark begins to light from him. Lightning begins to spark away from Mirio's body, as this is when he ends up saying to himself that although currently right now he's not at his level, eventually he will surpass All Might, and he will eventually be strong enough to take up the mantle. As he ends up saying these words with conviction, Night Eye, who was watching all this, felt as if he was seeing a second All Might forming in front of him. As this is where we're now going to end this part of this What If. That's right, guys. I'm ending it right here. Hopefully, you guys do enjoy. What do y'all thought? What are your thoughts on it? What do you guys think? Mirio being the next fielder one for all. I know I did it in the other What If, but I really like it in this one, considering the fact I just like Mirio as a character in general, and I believe we didn't get to see his full potential just yet. I mean, now in the manga probably, but I need to catch up on it since it's been a while since I read it. So yeah, I need to catch up on that one. But hey guys, yeah, it's your host Sage Day Samurai. He's hoping that you guys have a lovely day, have a lovely time, enjoy yourselves. And currently right now he is signing off. So peace and stay cool. Okay, bye.